There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
Just a heads up, this interview touches briefly on the subject of suicide. If you need help, call Lifeline on 13 11 14.
I'm back.
You're back. Sophie Cachia had never kissed a girl. She'd never been in a threesome. She'd never even been remotely attracted to another woman. She'd married her husband Jared when she was just 22. They'd been together since they were teenagers, and they had 2 kids pretty quickly after they got married. Sophie was the breadwinner. She was running a successful career as an influencer and a businesswoman, and she loved her husband. She loved being married. She loved her life. The last thing she expected was to fall madly in lust with a woman she met at a work function. She was lactating, for heaven's sake. She had a newborn at home. Her stitches hadn't even healed. Sex was really not top of mind. And then there was her.
Something had happened. I didn't exactly know what, but I had butterflies over a woman, and that was a first.
From Mamamia, you're listening to No Filter, a podcast where people tell their stories very candidly and aren't afraid to be vulnerable. My name is Mia Friedman. It is in no way an exaggeration to say that Sophie's life was never the same after meeting that woman. And it wasn't the woman herself who changed her life. It was the realisation that Sophie had that she was really attracted to women. What came next was a period of sexual discovery that nobody in Sophie's life, including her, especially her, ever saw coming. And it was one that involved passionate crushes, flings, relationships, heartbreak, and an emotional connection she'd never felt before. Sophie's engaged now to a woman she describes as everything she's ever wanted. Getting from that day at the work function to here, though, oh man, it was quite the trip. Sophie's outlined all of it in a new memoir called Then There Was Her. And after inhaling it, here's my chat with Sophie Cachia. The last time I saw you in this studio, it was during the pandemic, and I'd done an interview with Glennon Doyle about her book Untamed, which is about her ending her marriage after she fell in love with a woman and discovering her sexuality and a whole bunch of things. And you called me and left me a voice message when you were in your car driving somewhere, I think to Sydney, and you said, I could so relate. There was so much that it just felt like my story, down to falling in love with a soccer player.
Yeah.
So I said, come on, No Filter, let's talk about it. You went, okay. Then you came in here with your then girlfriend, Alana. She didn't want to be part of the interview, which was so fine. That was not on the cards. But you seemed quite, well, I'm going to ask you, what's your memory of that time?
I feel like a different Sophie existed for a big chunk of my life there. I look back with fond memories, but I look back as a stranger to myself, if that makes sense. And this is not at all an opportunity to point fingers or to, throw someone under a bus. But I think it's an important story to tell because I feel like so many people have been there and I had never been there in a relationship where you completely lose sight of who you are. And that was a first for me. So I needed to experience that and I needed to realise, this, whilst it was something that I thought would make me happy in long term, I definitely had the blinkers on and I had shut myself off to a lot of reality. So, I can sit here now in peace and with no ill feelings at all and going, wow, that was a really big life lesson and that needed to happen.
Were you happy when you guys were together?
Again, if you'd asked me then, I would have said yes. But I know happiness now to me is a calmness and it's an acceptance. it's, I was happy with Jared, my ex-husband, and I feel that same happiness now again with Maddie, my fiancé. And I'd be lying if I said I felt that exact same of happiness in a relationship where I felt I was chasing someone so much that I completely left myself behind.
It's not often that you read in a celebrity memoir just a couple of lines about the fact that you had labiaplasty, which is just so buried in everything else that's big
that
and amazing in your book. Tell me about your decision to have surgery on your, I want to call it a vagina, but I know it's called a vulva.
Vulva, yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so as you've read now in my book, I grew up in a family with 3 older sisters. So there were lots of showers and bath times together. And I recall at a very young age asking my mum, why do my bits hang out and my sisters don't? And I would have been like 4 or 5. And I think now of Florence, my daughter, asking me those questions, and I can't fathom that she would already be that self-conscious of her body. But from a young age, I recall wondering why my fanny looked different to my sisters.
If you don't have sisters, it wouldn't occur to Florence. Like it didn't occur to me because I had nothing to compare my bits to.
Yeah. And then sort of navigating, sexual experiences through high school, boys start saying things. And I remember a guy in year 10, he had his hands down my pants or up my skirt or something at a party, and he said to me, "What's that?" And he grabbed a hold of my
bits.
We're
immature. What are they called?
Flaps.
We're two grown women who've had children. They are called labia minora.
But I never felt that suited me because mine was so big that I was like, I don't think minora suits. In hindsight, they probably weren't that big, but all I recall is it was always a topic of conversation between myself and my girlfriends of, this innie or outie business, right? And, I had friends, and I remember having a friendship group where we would compare, and I had some where I went, oh, okay, it's not that bad because mine looks like yours. But then I'd have some friends and go, oh my goodness, yours is so neat and tucked and perfect. And already society was like, well, you've got a good vagina and you've got an ugly one.
And did you know that back then it was more, in men's magazines, they have to, legally in Australia, they had to airbrush out any thing that was protruding, and it said you had to heel to a single crack.
Right. Yeah, okay. And so similar to that, I would look up photos of them. As a teenager, I would go on porn websites and, oh my goodness, like these women, mothers or, again, you have in your head back then that if they're mums, then their vaginas must be all stretched and opened and, and I'm thinking, why are their vaginas better than mine? I'm 16. Why does mine look like this? And then you see memes on Facebook and stuff about ham sandwiches and this and that. And so
tacos.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for me, it was something that I was always incredibly self-conscious about. And it was something that even when I had my children, it was never something I did for anybody else. It also, from a medical point of view, caused me pain at times as well. Lots of rubbing in jeans, lots of chafing, bike shorts, you name it. I was conscious you could see it in bathers in summer. So it's never an issue from sexual partner's point of view. It was never anything like that, but it was just something for myself that I wanted to feel better. And I'm like that with Botox or, I've had my boobs done. It was never to impress my husband. It was never at his request. It was always to make myself feel better, which is fine. I'd had babies. I'd had stitches in my fanny before, so it wasn't anything.
Is it a general anaesthetic?
Well, I had it done the same time that I had my breast reduction done. So I had my boobs cut off and my flaps cut off at the same time. There's a headline for you.
Wow.
So I just remember trying to shift along the bed because I couldn't sit up because of my chest and I'm dragging stitches underneath me. So, yeah, it wasn't pleasant. But
when was this in your life? So was it after you'd had your second child?
Yeah.
Tell me about that, because having both of those things done speaks to wanting to reclaim your body maybe from pregnancy? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to project things onto you, but
No, I do recall speaking to Jared. I'd always had really big boobs, always really large breasts. But when I was younger, they were full of life. After breastfeeding 2 children, empty sacs and down here.
windsocks.
And I was 27 going, my boobs look like I'm 60. You know, and again, it was nothing about impressing other people. It was like, I just want to have nice boobs for the first time in my life. I've had double G's on my chest since I'm 15 years of age. And a breast reduction was something that my mum had taken me to inquire about at 18. So it was always something that I was going to have done. We just decided maybe wait till after kids. And then I thought, I'm 27. I'm not putting up with this anymore. I hate summer. I hate going out. I'm already tall enough. And then I've got these big boobs and everyone's looking. And you know what? I just wanted little boobies that just sat here. And that is the best decision I've ever made in my life.
Have you got those now?
And it's great. So good. My nipples are here. They are not here.
Yeah.
And again, that's personal choice. I wanted to do that for me. It has completely changed my life. It's changed the clothes I can wear, my confidence. It's made my life better.
At 27, you'd had 2 children. You got married at incredibly young.
Yeah.
You had your first child at 22. You were living a very different life, I imagine, at 27 to your friends and your peers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How were you feeling about that at the time?
It was where I thought I wanted to be. And I look back now, which I do talk about in the book, I was just so eager to grow up. I wanted to be a wife. I wanted to be a mother. You know, I thought that meant I'd established myself in life. And I look back now and I swear if I see anyone getting engaged under the age of 30, I'm like, what are you doing? You don't even know who you are. Stop.
Don't pregnant people look young these days?
Yeah, I know.
I'm like, it's a teenage mother. No.
Yeah.
They're 27.
I know. And I'm only 31, but I already feel like that. And I think that's because, again, I thought I knew myself back then. We all think we know ourselves in our 20s. Looking back now, oh my goodness. I hadn't even scratched the surface, and I don't believe I have now either, but I'm just in a different mindset of enjoying now and stop trying to, you know, set all these goals and reach them by certain dates and all of this stuff. So I really did believe that I knew who I was and I knew everything that I wanted, but that turned out to be a big load of crap.
Your book's called Then There Was Her, and there are a number of hers.
There are a number of hers
in the book.
And that's something, again, I don't think a lot of people know.
Yeah.
There were quite a few hers along my journey.
Yeah. The first her is the most significant though, because despite rumours that you and Jared, well, I was a little bit confused because you said there were rumours that we had an open relationship, but we actually didn't. But then you also spoke about the fact that it kind of turned you both on to see the other person with someone, like in a nightclub if you kiss someone. So how did that work, and was that a feature of your marriage through the whole time or just at the end?
It was a feature at different points, not constant. So it was a feature when we were a lot younger, when we were just sort of, 19, 20, free to just do what we wanted, I suppose. And then I suppose the idea of that was always open, but it wasn't like it was acted out constantly. So I would say towards the end of our relationship, it obviously became more apparent that we liked these things. And I do look back and go, okay, well, maybe that was me trying to escape something, or maybe that was me trying to get a kick out of something else because I wasn't content or I wasn't happy. And that's really where I discovered this idea of a woman. Like, I had never considered that in my entire life. I'd never been the girl that kissed a girl at parties when you're younger. I'd never even remotely thought I could be attracted sexually to a woman. And then again, I say that after having my children and realising I have a whole world ahead of me, I did feel like I had settled for this life that I believed I needed to have to make me happy, without going, well, how can I know I'm happy with that if I haven't explored all these other options?
It's not like you went on Tinder and created a profile to meet girls. It's not like you went to a gay bar. You just went to work, essentially. You went to do a speaking gig, you were on a panel. And describe what it was like to meet that woman at a time when you were not in that headspace.
No, I vividly remember sweating so much because my boobs were so full with milk because I was breastfeeding my new baby. And I didn't really have a lot of gay friends back then, gay female friends. But, you know, I was aware of the stereotypes that came with footy girls, they're all lesbians because apparently everyone's gay that plays sport. And so I had met a few couples. Anyway, so I rush in the door. I'm late. I get there and you know how it is. You get to an event. Hello, hello, hello. You go around the room and this woman completely stopped me. And when I say that everything around her went blurry and the electricity I felt up my arm when we shook hands, and I vividly remember how strong her handshake was. I thought, oh, it's like a man's handshake. And then it was like I saw her fingers and then I saw her arms and I saw veins and then I saw biceps, and I just followed her arm all the way up to her eyes, where I believe I just froze and went, hello. And in that moment I knew instantly something had happened. I didn't exactly know what, but I had butterflies over a woman, and that was a first. And then, you know, I'm trying to concentrate on the events of the night. I'm on a panel, I'm being interviewed, and the whole time I'm looking down the row. I'm like waiting for her to talk, and then I became attracted to her voice. It was very deep, it was very masculine. Kept looking at her fingernails and her hands, wondering why a woman would have such bitten down, you know, ugly fingernails. And she was so muscly and she was bantering like a man would. She was bantering like the boys I'd hung out with my whole childhood and schooling years. She was bantering like them, which I liked because I'd always hung around guys. I'd always been one of the boys. So I was instantly drawn to her.
It's funny, you then firstly you go home and tell Jared, which is an unexpected development, and he's kind of amused.
Yeah. Because we were so open with things like that. We had the type of relationship where we would be walking through the shopping centre and I knew Jared's exact type. So I would, you know, a girl's going to walk past and I would see Jared's eyes, you know, dart, and I'd be like, gotcha. And we were so comfortable and confident in our relationship that stuff never fazed us. And so we had actually had conversations about these moments in life, and I think we'd spoken about it not long before this, about, do you believe in them? Like when you meet someone, it can happen. And so that's why I rushed home. I go, oh my goodness, Jared, I just had a moment. I had a moment with a woman, and I think I'm obsessed with her. Like I had this instant crush on her. And again, the reason I was able to do that was because Jared understood me better, and I believe still to this day, probably more than anybody else ever will. And I was always so safe to be whoever I wanted to be, even if it meant going and telling my husband.
Would you have told him if it was a guy that you'd been suddenly attracted to?
Absolutely not. And we have, you know, that's been something that has been spoken about. People say, how was Jared so okay with things? How was Jared so okay with that? And he will always tell you if it was a guy, it would have been different. He always said, I couldn't compete with a girl. Like I wasn't threatened, or I couldn't compete because I could never offer what they offered. They couldn't offer what I offer. So, yes, it absolutely would have been different if it was a male.
How did you progress things? Because what I hear from women often, women who are bi or same-sex attracted, it can be a little uncertain. Are we mates? Are we not mates?
Yeah.
Is this a date? Are we friends? How did you navigate that, particularly having never had to do that with a woman before?
Yeah, well, we ended up getting along really well that night. You know, did the usual, follow each other on Instagram, that type of stuff. And we actually became friends from that night. So we would chat every now and then, but I always knew like that spark I would get when she'd message me or she replied to my story or whatever.
It was like a crush that
it was
you'd experienced
absolutely
with guys,
a crush. And yeah, started hanging out. I'd go watch her play footy, but when I say I'd go watch her play footy, like Jared and the kids would come and she's buying my kids footy jumpers, and I'm thinking, okay, I've got a crush on this girl, but I also really like her just as a friend. This is really cool. She's an awesome chick. But then she was like really intrigued with my life too, and then I was like, wait, hang on, like I don't know her sexuality. I don't have lesbian friends. How do you ask someone if they're gay? If I ask her, is she going to think that I like her? So yes, there were a lot of...
So you didn't even know if she was gay?
No. And I recall, this is how naive I was back then. I recall sitting with a friend of mine and stalking her Instagram going, do you reckon she's seeing anyone? And there was this girl in a lot of her photos, but they were never really, love you, my babe, or love heart emojis like I'd always do with Jared, or the best boyfriend in the world. And I'm like, oh, no, maybe it's her housemate. They're just friends. They're just friends. So it was so naive. Like anyone who now has been in that environment would be able to say they were in a relationship. But I was just like, no, they just must be friends. Like maybe she's not even gay. Idiot. And so, we just stayed in touch. And later on, she did tell me that she knew I was interested very early.
And what did she think? Because I imagine the cliche of the straight woman who wants to explore is one that's very familiar to gay women. So how did she approach it?
I think because she ended up going through a breakup maybe 6 to 8 months after we met, and I think she liked the attention, as we all do. So I think she got a bit of a kick out of that. And then it ended up that we were just out one night randomly at the same place, and I don't think anything would have actually have happened because she is a really straight down the line, straighty 180, textbook person, and I do not believe she would have ever done anything.
Because you were married.
Because I was married, absolutely. And then we just got really drunk one night and I said some things that I wouldn't have said if I had less than 10 wet pussy shots, funnily enough. She said, obviously I'm very interested, but you're married. And this is where it was always an interesting conversation because then I'd be like, yes, I am, but I'm also allowed to do this stuff. So it's a bit of an awkward conversation, that bit at the start, because I was like, we're really good friends. I don't want her to think I'm lying and being sneaky behind Jared's back.
It's like she needed a note from Jared.
Yeah, she needed a permission slip to say. So here's me going, oh, it's okay. He says I can do what I want.
Especially when you're really drunk.
Oh, it's 5 a.m. in the morning.
That's what they all say.
Absolutely. Oh, he won't mind. But then we had this kiss and something set fire in me, a kiss with a woman that happened so naturally, so passionate. It was hot. It got things going in my body that I never thought a kiss with a woman. Like I said, I'd never even kissed girls back at school just for fun. And there was a connection. Now, whether that was a connection between myself and her or just myself and women, I don't know, but the snowball started after that.
You're a pretty well-known figure and you were in the street outside a nightclub pashing a girl at 5 in the morning.
And there was a line
next
of
to
people
a bin
on a bin.
At a taxi stand.
Yep, class, beautiful, 5 a.m.
Which is the stuff of many a relationship has started that way.
Yeah.
But did any part of you think, because Jared might have been okay with it, but if someone pulls their phone out.
Yes, and I didn't think of that at the time. But again, there was a part of me that didn't care either. It sounds so like I'm writing a fucking fairy tale here, but I got so lost in that moment. And it wasn't until we pulled ourselves away from each other and she jumped in a taxi, I sort of stood there and I went, and I saw this line of people to get into the nightclub we'd just come out of. And I went, oh, shit, okay, pull yourself together in the taxi. And I did have that moment of, wow, okay, who just saw that? And that's what was difficult for me for the next few years, especially when I was navigating women, but I wasn't talking about it, was a lot of people were seeing me do it.
You were in a nightclub one time and some people recognised you and came over. What happened?
So I was I don't think I was newly dating. I can talk about her. Her name was Catherine, still friends to this day, and we were, drunk on a dance floor. We were at a prominent gay bar and we were having a bit of a kiss, and after we stopped kissing, these two girls tapped me on the shoulder and I turned around and they said, oh, I'm sorry, Sophie, but can we grab a pic? And I died and I went, sure, yep, no worries, grab my photo, and inside I'm dying thinking, oh my gosh, they've just seen me hooking up with that girl. But then immediately I was reassured that I was in a safe space because they took the photo and then they said, hey, it's all good, it's all good. And I just went, oh, thank you, because again, that lack of judgment was something I hadn't really experienced in my life. I'd grown up in this super straight heterosexual world where you went out and girls were criticising, oh, her fucking shoes, or oh, what's she doing, or talking about your best friend who's in the next cubicle, and that was the life I'd always known. And then to be in this gay world where these people who don't even know me but they do follow me go, hey, no judgment, all good. Immediately I went, wow, okay, these are the environments that I want to be around. These are the environments I want to be putting myself in.
That's so interesting, the idea of being part of a community, sort of being an outsider, but being introduced into a community.
Yeah, it was a really powerful discovery for me, and I don't feel, qualified enough. I don't feel like I earn the right to belong in that community just yet, because there's been many people for years before me who have, battled for us, who have done it very hard. There's lots of people who don't have the acceptance or the love that I've had. So I do feel like an imposter in a way, going, hey, I'm waving my rainbow flag, I'm part of this, because I haven't really struggled. But in saying that, I knew instantly it was a place I wanted to be, because now some of my best friends are in that community. I have learned so much about life, about acceptance, about all forms of humans, that is truly so beautiful. It hurts my soul. And I would never have been exposed to that in my previous life. I had a gay friend growing up and I thought, oh yeah, I'm an ally. I've got my gay friend Nick. No, not at all.
What surprised you about being on the inside of that community where you are now?
I remember vividly walking through this place, this bar, but it was a different night, and I was coming back from the toilet, and I believe I saw every form of human possible. I saw gay men together. I saw the trans community. I saw, joint cubicles. I saw really masculine lesbians together, and then I saw really straight girls together who in my previous life I wouldn't have thought were a lesbian. Same as I saw who I believed looked like very straight men kissing other men, and I'm just like, wow, everybody is accepted here. It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, but also playing football taught me that too. So I started playing local footy, and again, the stereotype is all lesbians play football. That wasn't the case, but an environment where anyone was accepted, and that even included me, who was, social media influencer who's on her stories going, guys, this is my new lipstick. I was just so welcomed in with tradies, with girls who rode their motorbikes, with sparkies, with uni students who worked at Sports Girl. Like, it didn't matter who you were safe. And again, that was so different to what I'd ever grown up in. And so I just thought that I knew I belonged, because that's who I've always been, whether I was gay or straight. That's who Sophie's always been inside. I've always welcomed everybody. I've always accepted everyone's differences. I've always said, well, maybe they're like that because they've suffered something hard in their life. And I've always been the outsider because I've been so welcoming of everyone. And I thought, oh, now everyone's so welcoming of me. Okay, this is good. So it wasn't like I came in going, okay, I'm a lesbian, now I fit in. I came in as Sophie and I still fitted in. Hi, it's Sophie Cachia and you're listening to No Filter with Mia Freedman.
Before you ended your marriage and committed to exploring your sexuality, you explored it within the confines of your marriage for a while. And there's one part of your book where you talk about going on a family holiday with a girlfriend and Jared and the kids. And Jared slept in one room with the kids and you slept in another room with your girlfriend. How was that navigated, and how did everybody feel about it at the time?
Yeah, that was probably, looking back, that's when I knew that our marriage was over. When Jared and myself and my children had been invited down to my best friend's beach house, I had newly been seeing this other girl. Jared and him were friends, and a group of us all went down there, and it was just an assumption that Jared and I would sleep in the main room with the kids until sort of later on in the night, when I needed to trust my gut in saying, I'm not comfortable to do that because I don't want to sleep next to you anymore. And it wasn't so much I want to sleep with her tonight. It was, I no longer want to sleep with you. And I also needed to, I didn't exactly know where he was at with his feelings, but I knew that I needed to draw the line to stop giving Jared an impression that we were still operating as the family. So I would have been lying to everybody if I had just slept in that room with him. Not that we would have had sex, but it still would have been the family unit. So I do look back with a bit of like, oh, Sophie, it was probably a bad idea not sleeping with him, but the fact I slept with another person next door to him. Again, he didn't admit it at the time. He admitted it later that was really uncomfortable for him, and I did feel really bad about it.
How did the girl feel?
Bless her. She was 19. She was sleeping with some 28-year-old on Instagram. I don't think she cared really. She was high-fiving herself to sleep. But it was a pivotal moment in me going, no, I need to trust this, and I'm no longer comfortable sleeping in a bed with you. Not because I don't like you, but it's because I'm not in love with you anymore, and we're not technically in a relationship anymore. So it needed to stop at some point. And it was really after that it did.
How did you meet girls around that time? Because you hadn't officially come out, you hadn't even ended your marriage officially.
Yeah.
Where did you meet the 19-year-old?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So I started following on from that first meeting at the work event. I did meet friends, friends through friends, and quickly discovered everyone knows everyone in Melbourne in the gay community. So especially lesbians, you'll very rarely date someone who hasn't hooked up with your friend. So just sort of, friends. I'm going out. I was really open to going out and just hanging out with different people as well. So, my little 19-year-old, I was out for a drink with my friends Harriet and Ash and thought, oh, who's this cute little girl? And it was moments like that where I was like, I just want to kiss someone tonight. Like I'm not searching for a relationship, but really I'm single and I want to explore this. I'm just going to have a cheeky pash on the dance floor that ended up in a 9-month relationship with a 19-year-old girl. So
when you say I was just like, yeah, she's cute, I'm going to pash her tonight, did you approach that in a different way to you would as a straight woman? Hooking up with a guy?
No, I think once I sort of opened that door, I think once I allowed myself to go, right, this is what I'm going to do, it was very easy. If not, I had more confidence, I think, in ways because like we talked about before, you can be really friendly to a girl, but there's always this moment of like, are we friends or is she?
Yeah.
Like even now, Mads and I, I'll run into a friend and we'll hug and all this. And if she's gay, Maddie will be like, she wants you. I'm like, she doesn't. I've known her for 5 years. She's like, she does. I'm like, oh my God. So there still always is that very fine line. But yeah, it was just friends of friends, and I really just let go and just went back to being Sophie. And for a period there, I could just completely shut out my children, which sounds horrible, but it was just shut out the motherhood side of Sophie and just be 28 and be single and just be free for a bit to figure out exactly what I wanted.
I'm going to ask you about the sex a little bit later because you go into some details and I've got some questions you'll be shocked to hear. But I want to ask you about Alana and meeting her because she in many ways is, I won't say it's the emotional heart of the book, but it's the emotional intensity and the drama and the turmoil and the pain came from that relationship that the two of you had. She was a professional athlete. She still is. She had a profile of her own. You were newly divorced and had a high profile. Was she wary going into that relationship because of who you were?
Yes, but I think that's what was appealing to her as well, in the sense that she would always tell me, you are so not someone I would ever date in my life.
Did she have a type before you and since
Yeah,
you?
and I think she still does, and I'm so
and you were
far
just an
at
exception.
the other end of it. Yeah. So it's actually funny. It's funny. She had another partner for a while after me, and I remember seeing a photo and talking to my girlfriend. I would go, so weird. She doesn't seem like her type. And then I remembered I was like, no, I wasn't her type. I wasn't her type.
Yeah.
I was the exception. So
there was just something between you that sort of transcended logic, common sense. You were both very other. Is that fair to describe your relationship together or something between you as the best and the worst?
We would both say that, and if you asked her right now, she would absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I don't like to use the word toxic, but our relationship at times showed signs of that for sure, which we both contributed to. Situations I continually put myself in, like I said before, was a Sophie that I don't even know now and I'd never known before.
Talk a little bit about that in terms of how you lost yourself, because you're a very strong woman.
I am, and
you're
I
very
wasn't
assertive. What did that look like?
So Alana is a incredibly strong woman as well, and I don't say I feared her out of fear for my safety or anything, but I found myself cowering down to someone all the time willingly. Right? And that's not who Sophie's ever been. 5-year-old Sophie wasn't that, and 31-year-old Sophie isn't that. And that's what I was attracted to, because it was such a different relationship dynamic for me. I'd never known anything like that. So I thought, oh, this feels different. I'm going to go with this.
And kind of sexy after being
Hot.
the alpha in your marriage.
So hot. So attractive for me to, and again, I'd been a mum, I'd been looking after Jared, I hadn't looked after myself, and then all of a sudden I had someone looking after me. And again, I say it in the book, it wasn't financially, I didn't need anyone to be making me money, but someone did shit for me. Someone goes, hey, we're not doing that, we're doing this. And I'm like, okay.
And bought you gifts.
And bought me gifts and said, hey, I've booked dinner, I've booked us a holiday. And I went, oh, yeah. Like it could have been the littlest decision, but I didn't have to think, because I got told what to do and I loved it. So whilst I have never, ever wanted to make her sound controlling, because she's not, it was Sophie willingly doing this, because I was like, someone dominate me. This is brilliant.
You became really submissive.
Oh, my God, absolutely.
But voluntarily so.
Voluntarily.
Almost like in 50 Shades
Absolutely.
of Grey.
I was like, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And I will do it.
And not just sexually, but
No, God, no. In life, the sense of responsibility was off my shoulders, and it was so good because I could disconnect. I could go with her. She'd book me a flight to Sydney. I'd fly up there. She'd tell me exactly what we're doing, and then I'd go home, and then I'd go back to, right, I'm mum now. We're doing this. And then I'd go back there. And it was like I had this conversation with a friend of mine, and he was like, it's almost like you go to Disneyland for the weekend. You just escape reality completely. And it was so lucrative. But I had my blinkers on, because there's no longevity in that. That bubble wasn't going to last forever. She always knew that. She always told me that. And that's something I'll give her credit for, because she did always tell me that.
What did she say? What do you mean she told you that?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go away one day. I'm going to go overseas one day. And I say, yeah.
Because she's a professional athlete.
Yes.
You got to travel.
Yeah, but this is, mind you, this was
club.
before COVID, right? This is before, we had connected long before COVID. So if you told me the world was going to shut down and we'd be disconnected, it might have been different. But I'm going, yeah, it's fine. With my work, I can travel. I can do this. I've got money. I'll jump on a plane.
To Disneyland.
Whatever. I'll come over wherever you are. And I really, again, which I talk about in my book, I fell in love with her family as well. And when you've got children, having a beautiful family support system around you is really important. So I fell in love with a person, but I fell in love with a future as well that I could see. I still do have relationships with her family, and I have absolutely nothing but full respect for them, beautiful people. And so I did get caught up in that as well, because I do have children, so I need to think about those things as well. It wasn't just me. It was, okay, who's, that great in-laws, great aunties and uncles. They've got cousins. Oh, my God, amazing. So there were so many facets which I found so appealing.
Did you fight? Was it volatile? Yes. What did you fight about?
Oh, Mia. Who didn't have a nice tone on the phone, or who didn't put a kiss on the end of a message.
And would you instigate it because you were needy? Or she was also needy?
She was needy too, whilst I know she'll listen to this and she will say, nah, bullshit, no way. She was very needy as well, and absolutely I was. I was needy in a way though because she'd made me be like that as well though. I talk about
Because you didn't feel secure.
No, I never felt secure. She knew that. She knew that her actions were doing that. And I did say to her once, like, I don't know if I'll ever get over this feeling. I don't think you'll ever be able to make me secure, which should have been a red flag for me as well. But I didn't admit, I admitted it, but I didn't pay enough attention to it.
I was going to say, what were the red flags for you that looking back?
Oh, I just settled for a lot less than what I would want in a relationship. I'm very big on open communication, affection, appreciation, all these things. And I just settled. And that is not to say she's a bad person. That's simply just to say she was not the person for me, which I can wholeheartedly accept now. And I'm completely at peace now. But for a long time I wasn't, because I felt like I changed myself so much. All I wanted was for her to just not commit in terms of a marriage sense, but just say, yep, I'm here. I love you. And it very rarely came. So I kept saying, what can I do to make her stay? And that's not Sophie.
It can be seductive, that withholding of what someone wants from you.
And I kept going, and that's my stubbornness. 2 alpha females, that's me going, I'm going to prove her wrong. She is going to love me, and you watch. Idiot.
How did you get into the breakup cycle? Like the number of times, and it was pretty much always her breaking up with you. I was feeling protective of you, and it was like, Sophie, don't go back. No, not again. Not again. No.
Mia, even when I'm reading it back now, I had to do my Audible version. I'm reading it going, fucking hell, Sophie. Are you an idiot? What are you doing? So even I felt that for myself.
How many times did it end?
Oh, like 4 or 5 maybe.
And you were gutted every time?
Every time. And every time I went straight back.
It's like an addiction.
I think I quote that in the book. She was my drug and I was addicted. And if you ask me why, I can't tell you. I loved her.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And you just said we've all been there. I'd never been there. I'd been treated like a queen my whole life. Every relationship I'd ended in high school, whatever. Really, I'd got everything I wanted my whole life. This was the first time someone was going, you're not having it. So I wanted it more.
Of course. Because you couldn't have her.
No.
In the way you needed to.
I think that's why I wanted to make it such a feature of my book is we need to somewhat remove the person from it and go that environment and that theme.
Yeah.
That's huge in people's lives. And I knew it's not about Alana Kennedy, and I love her as a person, and I still her soccer things sometimes pop up in my friggin' feed on Instagram. Like I don't think I'll ever escape her, but I wish her so well and I want her to have all the success, and I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. The important part for me in the book is recognising, and like I said, I was reading it back going, oh, fucking hell, you really, Sophie? Really? You believe that again?
Yeah,
you've gone back?
Yeah, exactly. And it'll be different this time. And I'm like, Sophie, it won't be.
And I can laugh now. I can. But
Spoiler alert, it won't be different
for a long time, I couldn't laugh.
Yeah, no, you really couldn't laugh.
I couldn't laugh.
And not only was it the intensity of the breakup back together, you also had this lovely woman who is now your fiancée.
She is my beautiful fiancée.
You were, every time you'd break up with Alana, you'd go back to Maddie, and then you'd dump Maddie to go back to Alana. What shocked me, you and Maddie were able to build something so beautiful from that start. How did you do that?
So what scared me about Maddie was when I met her, I saw so many similarities between her and Jared, right? And I still often say so many times she'll do something and I'm like, oh my God, you're so Jared, which is brilliant, right? Because he is an incredible person. But then this voice in the back of my head would go, but you left Jared. You didn't want to be married to Jared anymore. So Maddie at that stage in my life was too good.
Yeah. She weren't ready for good.
No.
Yet.
And I did communicate that to her and that's why it was really challenging for me. And even now, this whole experience has been really challenging for me, but especially Maddie, because not only do I have to revisit things, she has to revisit a lot of things. You know, this interview, for example, is going to break her heart, me speaking about someone else. But I feel like I needed everything to happen.
We don't want to break Maddie's heart.
We don't want to break Maddie's heart. She's beautiful and
Yeah.
she always was. So it was very difficult being so in love with someone, having to push someone so beautiful away that every single person in my life
like, please be with
loved. And it's not that they didn't like Alana. They did. They really liked her, but they knew that Maddie was better for me.
Yeah, exactly.
And that I was more me. They saw this
Yeah.
relaxed, happy version. So again, it was nothing personal. They're just like, you're so tense. You're so this. You're so – even one of my best mates who's a guy, Alana and I went to pick up some gym equipment off him, and within 5 minutes of being there, he stood there with his hands on his hips and he goes to Alana, he goes, what the fuck have you done to Soph? He goes, who's that? And like I've been friends with him for like 15 years and he goes, look at you, I've never seen you. And I was like, what? Thinking I'm totally normal.
Yeah.
But even he was able to acknowledge that even my body language
Yeah,
and then
it's
my,
true.
you know, I didn't talk unless I was talked to, you know, like, and again, that
You
wasn't
deferred
her.
to her. You'd look at her to answer questions and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
And so whilst Alana was very hot and cold with me, and there were times I was so angry and upset at her, what was scaring me was how unemotional I was to doing it to Maddie so easily. And that's when I knew that I just wasn't in the headspace to be making any big decisions, because how brutal I was to someone who had been nothing but so kind to me. But I was in this stage of my life where we all hear it, follow your heart, go with your intuition. And that was all telling me Alana. And I'm going, but guys, it's not getting me anywhere, but I'm doing what all the memes and all the quotes tell us and all the, you know, go where the fire is and all
But
this.
that can be really misleading, this cultural idea that if it's very passionate and volatile, that's true love.
Yeah.
And it can feel like that, but it can also be the worst thing for you.
Yeah, and someone did say that to me. They
Yeah.
said we often – actually, you know what? I think it was Maddie. I think it might have been
Someone
Maddie.
very wise.
Yes, someone very wise who I now love dearly. Something along the lines of, we confuse that with,
Yeah.
we think that's
Yeah.
a positive because I feel so much, so it must be worth
Particularly
something.
after being in a long marriage where things were a bit stale
Yeah.
and you didn't feel enough.
Yeah, that these highs, we could have a fight and she could make me feel as low as dog shit, but in half a second she could put me straight back up. And I fell in
That's
love
addictive,
with
yeah.
that, and it was addictive, but it wasn't stable.
No.
And so we can all sit here, like you said, reading, going, Sophie, you're not going back until you're in it. And I needed her, the best thing she ever did, which I now can see. I didn't see at the time. The best thing she ever did was cut me off completely because she had recognised she could no longer do that to me as well. And I needed her to do that because I never would have been brave
It
enough
was
to do
kind
it.
in a way. Instead of keeping you, like she ended up really cutting it, and it was heartbreaking when I read
was
that part
horrific.
and she said, don't contact me again. I gasped, but I was like, okay, phew.
You gasped. I
I
screamed.
did. I was like,
I
okay,
squealed.
good, phew. That's good. It's a clear boundary.
Please don't come back. Please don't come back.
Please block Sophie's number. Do not let her contact you again. I need resolution.
Yeah. And it's funny because they say hindsight's wonderful, but that truly was the best thing she ever did for me. And I can appreciate that now because I was holding on still and I was still waiting for that text and I was still waiting. There were things that I absolutely don't agree with, like the ludicrous birthday present that she sent me 6 weeks after we hadn't even said a word to each other. Very
So
sentimental.
there were definitely some really mixed messages.
That was just
Yeah.
fucking stupid. Like, if you're listening, you should never have done that.
I liked when you set fire to it in the
I
garden.
did. I set fire to it. Nothing exists anymore. At the time, that was like she pulled me back a bit and I went,
Yeah.
part of me was
It's
like,
just tugging on that fishing line to make sure you're still there.
yeah, and
So
the
you haven't
flowers
swum
and the
away.
this. And then, even the next month I get a Louis Vuitton wallet with my initials on it. Oh, I thought you might like this. I was like, what are you doing? But I had stopped replying then too. So I had grown a little bit stronger in that sense because my mental health was horrific.
It was.
Yeah, it was really, really, it was unsafe.
And it was locked down. And, yeah, things got very, very, very dark.
They did, and I had ignored them for a very long time. They'd probably built up quite a lot in this relationship, like feeling so unworthy and so, I never knew where I stood and my self-worth, and then it just sort of all hit ahead because, the reality was I'd been cut off by someone who I loved so much, and wasn't even the breakup. It was like we faced a situation where I might not ever see you again. So you might break up with someone, but they still live in the same city, or, you know, there was a way that you may reconnect. But this was breaking up with someone and them literally moving to the other side of the world in a pandemic where there's no foreseeable future at all. So to me, I was dealing with grief. I wasn't just dealing with heartbreak. I was dealing with grief plus severe depression and being a single mum at home with 2 kids full-time, trying to keep them afloat. But I was drowning.
What were the steps out of that?
I knew myself that something really silly was going to happen if I didn't. I booked myself a doctor's appointment. I literally jumped online. I went book now at my local Essendon clinic and my beautiful GP, who I just feel so safe with, and I walked in there at 9 a.m. the next morning and I couldn't breathe, but I was so excited to get there. It was like adrenaline through my chest, and I sat down and I completely burst into tears and I said, I need help. I need help right now. And he recognised immediately how bad things were.
Because you thought you were going to hurt yourself.
Well, I was hurting myself. That's a reality. I was self-harming.
Yeah.
And self-harming was something that I hadn't done for a while, but it was something that became quite prevalent during that time because I always saw self-harming as a way when my chest hurt so much that I'd defer that pain somewhere else, and I just wanted to feel pain elsewhere in my body. And all of these things should have been signs that I wasn't in a healthy place. But again, I ignored them, which a lot of us do when we're suffering mental health.
And a pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And so that night when she said to me, don't ever contact me again, you say you gasped. I screamed. I was walking around a lake and I screamed, and it was raining and it was so cinematic. Like the wind was in my face and I had snot everywhere. And I thought, no, the hurt inside of my chest, I knew that night when I got home, and Jared yelled at me like your dad would yell at you if you snuck out and went to a party. He pointed his finger in my face. Oh, I get emotional because he felt for me so much, but he said, you are never going back. And he screamed at me with his finger and he said, look at you, fucking look at you, you are never going back. And to see the father of my kids, my ex-husband, who loved me so much as the mother of his children, he cared about me that much. I went, okay, I need some help. Yeah, I need some help. And so, yeah, then the process started of it was fucking lockdown. It was on Zoom. It was still hard because I couldn't connect with anyone. I was still alone. I was having psychology appointments a couple of times a week, but it was on a bloody laptop. Like, it was still hard. But somehow, there was, my children were just always and will always be my, light at the end of the tunnel. And I saw my kids hurting for so long in that period of time too, because I saw mum hurting. And when I knew it started to affect them as well, I thought, I just knew that it's time to – only you can change this now. You can tell everyone, you can get all the help you want, but it's ultimately up to you.
You didn't rush back to Maddie. She wouldn't have taken you if you had, probably, hopefully. There needed to be time.
Mm-hmm.
When you did get back together and you won her trust back and you learnt about who you are and you processed everything that had happened with Alana, and things got serious with Maddie quickly because she was the
Which
good
I
person.
always knew that it had the ability to.
Which is part of why you'd put it off, wasn't it? Because
absolutely.
You'd left this marriage that you'd been in since you were a kid, basically. Yep. You wanted to go and explore, have fun, be silly, be crazy, find out who Sophie was.
Yep.
Were you scared about locking that down again?
Only because I was scared of hurting her again, not because I didn't think I wanted it. I realised that amongst all the flights and the holidays and the travelling and the up and down and all this, all I wanted at the end of the day was to come home to someone on the couch with me in jammies watching Home and Away. So I thought I wanted all this, and then at the end of the day, when my partner then had to jump on an overseas flight to go play or had to do this, had to do that, I thought, this is not actually the life I want. I want to live my life with someone. I want to be here. And when I would think about, whenever I envisaged that, it was always Maddie sitting on my couch. It always was. And it did take a long time for me to accept that, because I didn't rush back to her. I didn't want to, but I also didn't, because I knew the possibility that she'd take me back so quick, it wasn't fair on her. And that's something I had learnt as well, because I hadn't learnt that throughout the turmoil. So that was a sign to me that I'd grown as well, because the old Sophie would have just gone, oh, hey, blah, blah, blah.
Because you didn't want to be alone. I need someone.
Yeah. And
also the ego of being with someone who loves you.
I had really accepted, whilst I said I had been so unemotional towards her for so long and I was really cold, and to think back now that she's taken me back with some of the things I've done, sometimes I still don't believe it. Like I feel unworthy of it. But she said to me, she goes, I always loved you. And there was a part of her that always knew that we were meant to be together. And she was right. So I did. I spent a lot of time on my own, and at times where I would be home on my own and my kids were maybe at their dad's and I'd want to catch up with a friend, or I'd want to, we were in lockdown, I couldn't do anything but sit in my shit, which Maddie had told me I needed to do for so long.
Shit. Yeah.
She yelled at me one time and said, you need to learn to sit in your shit. You don't deal with anything. You just run away from it. And she was right. And I knew she was right when she was telling me that.
As I was running away, I knew she was right.
I was like, shut up, you are not.
As I was bolting away from my shit.
Yes.
I was like, you have a good point.
Yes,
but still.
but I don't care right now. And so as I was sitting in my shit, I just kept going, she was right.
Yeah.
She was right. Like it was that point I was going, this has sucked. But everything that has happened to me was actually supposed to happen, because I am dealing with so many things now. I was dealing with things from my marriage I hadn't dealt with. I was dealing with mental health that I hadn't addressed. I was dealing with, the life situation I was in, and, I was going to start to divorce my husband, and things that I was just ignoring for so long. Maddie and the pandemic taught me I had to sit in my shit, and I did. And when Melbourne opened up again a bit, I was, I wasn't dating, but I was chatting, I jumped on Tinder. I'd never done that. I jumped on Hinge for a whole of 2 weeks. And I saw Maddie come up on Hinge one time, actually. I gave her a like. That annoyed her a lot. But, I did, and I slept with a couple of girls. I slept with a guy one night. And I just, when I was with these people, they were lovely. Half of them are my friends. I was going, I don't want to be sitting here with you. I want to be sitting here with Maddie. Like we hadn't seen each other for over 6 months, longer, hadn't spoken a word, and I'm hanging out with people going, I just want to be sitting on the couch with Maddie. And that's when I realised that's all I wanted. I just wanted her. And for a while, and even parts of the book I have read to her, she's like, oh, it sounds like you just settled for me. I was like, no, Mads.
No.
You taught me that I am at my happiest when I'm doing nothing. I don't need to be on a plane. I don't need another Louis Vuitton bag. I don't need to be at front row at a Matilda's game. I want to be on the couch with you. I've just washed my hair. It's in a bun. I've got no makeup on, and I'm the happiest I've ever been.
You wrote about on Instagram, I think it was around Christmas, or maybe time is a construct. Mm-hmm. You guys were on a road trip together, and you wrote about how you'd put on weight. Mm-hmm. And how she, for the first time in your life, she'd helped you feel okay about your body and about that. Tell me about that.
So I've always been quite confident in my body, knowing it's not perfect, but something that has always been a big insecurity of mine is how pale my skin is. And as I sit here with my deep dark bronze tan on, Mads and Jared, again, whenever I say this, I don't mean Jared because he was wonderful, but I was still never comfortable to be me. Since being back with Maddie, she thinks I'm the most beautiful I could ever be when I think I look like dog shit. And I think that's, she's brought out this whole new side to me of going, 32 this year, I'm a mum, I have flaws on my body and they are beautiful. Like even now I'm like, oh, I've had the operation, I've had all this, but I still go, oh, I've had kids, vagina. And she goes, Sophie, your vagina is the most beautiful thing I could ever look at. And that's where our souls are so connected, because we're both very spiritual. We're both we've always been so in sync like that. And so I, for the first time in my life, almost set myself a goal, which didn't end up being that hard, of being completely tan-free for the whole of summer. I went on Survivor on national television, where I was as white as these walls with no fear at all. And I lived out summer completely makeup-free, completely tan-free. And that represents where I am at in my life and how comfortable and at peace I am with who I am now. And not to say she's all credit for that, because I do believe I've come a long way too, but she's been an incredible influence.
Hearing Sophie talk so candidly about sex and knowing she was open to talking more, we actually did keep talking in a lot more detail for a bonus episode that you can hear if you're a Mamamia subscriber. To be totally transparent, this podcast will always be free, but I regularly want more time with my guests because I have more questions. And so we often make extra episodes for anyone who wants more. Here's a little taste of what we cover in the bonus episode.
I'm about to tell you something that nobody knows. So we hadn't had sex in months. I was dating my 19-year-old girlfriend, but Jared was playing in a footy grand final in about September, and I think I'd gone over to get the kids ready or whatever. And he said to me, Sophie, I'm going to ask you something.
And also this.
Oh my God, we had the best sex of my life last night ever.
You can listen now through the link in the show notes where you can subscribe. And spoiler alert, it's not one to listen to in the car if you've got kids. Or maybe it is. I don't know what you talk to your kids about. You do you. Anyway, you can read an extract of Sophie's book And Then There Was Her on mamamia.com.au, and you can find her book And Then There Was Her in any good bookstore. I highly recommend it. Our producer is Gia Moylan. The executive producer is Eliza Ratliff, and I'm Mia Friedman.